All right, we're gonna get to it today. Let's see here. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Audio's good. All righty. As usual, this is a read along. You can check the descriptions below. Follow the links below as well if you like. This is for my personal benefit as well as the benefit of anybody else that perhaps just wants to listen along, make any comments, or listen to the analysis. This is a nonprofit, just my own personal goals for the year to read these articles. So let's get started. As usual, I'll read the article, try not to analyze it until I'm fully finished with it. But go. Title of the article is Trump Has No Solution for Black America. All right. Article by Joe Tash, September 23rd, 2024. The photo is of the President Donald Trump meets with African American leaders in 2020. Credit Flickr. All right, the article reads as follows. The final months before the presidential election, much media ink has been spilled over black voters, quote, turning away from Biden, end quote, abandoning the Democratic Party, end quote, and, quote, backing Trump in record numbers, end quote. In fact, a recent NAACP poll found that 26% of black men under the age of 50 said they support Donald Trump over Kamala Harris in the election. But what is behind the phenomenon of Trump gaining support among some sectors of the black community? And does he really offer any solutions for the crisis facing black America? When Harris first replaced Joe Biden as the Democratic Party's presidential nominee, there was jubilation in the liberal corporate media. Harris's ascendance injected new energy into the Democratic Party and its affiliates as she replaced an unprecedentedly unpopular and incapable candidate. 2 months later, the dust has settled and concerns have reemerged for the Democratic Party about their ability to defeat Trump in November. Harris and Trump appear to be in a dead heat among likely voters. Voter turnout. Black voter turnout is of particular concern to the Democrats. The Democratic Party has long relied on support from a supermajority of support from black voters to win a presidential election. In 2020, roughly 80% of black voters cast their ballots for Biden. Every Democratic presidential nominee since 2000 has received an even higher share of the black vote. Recent polling data indicates that only 82% of likely black voters in key swing states support Harris, and she is struggling in particularly with black voters under the age of 50 and black men. Polling data should be taken with a grain of salt, but Harris will need high turnout and support from black voters in order to win the election, and there is enough smoke to indicate that this may be a problem for her campaign. Why is it that Harris, who would be the country's first black woman president if elected, is struggling to garner support among black voters despite facing a candidate as vile as racist as Trump? A party of broken promises. Harris's challenges with black voters are reflective of a broader challenge facing the Democrats. Another recent poll of black voters found that nearly half of people surveyed believe that we, quote, need a viable third party to compete with the Democrats and Republicans, end quote. The majority of people surveyed said they feel anxious about the country's current economic situation and expressed support for reparations, emergency rental assistance programs, and policies to address police brutality. The Democratic Party has paid lip service to each of these issues in recent years, but has failed to back up their rhetoric with action. The party is a political chameleon, expressing support for the most popular progressive causes of the day while campaigning, only to reverse course once elected or when the political winds change. Harris herself personifies this general trend. For example, Harris has built her political career on the foundation of her 15 years working as a prosecutor. In that time, she worked to needlessly keep thousands of people imprisoned, defying a Supreme Court order to reduce overcrowding in California prisons. Prosecuted working class parents whose children had low school attendance, and mocked people who call for our society to build more schools and less jails. Let me repeat that. For example, Harris has built her political career on the foundation of her 15 years working as a prosecutor. In that time, she worked to needlessly keep thousands of people imprisoned, defying a Supreme Court order to reduce overcrowding in California prisons, prosecuted working class parents whose children had low school attendance, and mocked people who call for our society to build more schools and less jails. Despite her, quote, tough on crime, end quote, roots, Harris expressed support for the movement to defund the police in 2020. Yet in the past 4 years, the Biden-Harris administration has done the opposite. Instead, they funneled hundreds of millions of dollars into expanding the country's police forces. In her current campaign, Harris has said something about defunding the police or addressing mass incarceration, has said nothing about defunding the police or addressing mass incarceration. On the contrary, on the contrary, she's leaning into her history as California's, quote, top cop, end quote, in an effort to peel away some of Trump's support base. Harris has similarly flip-flopped on the issue of reparations, immigration, fracking, and healthcare. Harris and the Democrats' empty and inconsistent rhetoric of key issues is a weakness that Trump attacks them on. Trump's campaign is also bolstered by the fact that many black people and working class people in general are economically worse off now at the end of Biden's administration than they were at the end of Trump's administration. This is not because Trump took any real interest in the need of working people, but because the COVID-19 pandemic forced the federal government, both late in Trump's administration and early in Biden's, to implement an expanded social safety net in 2020 and 2021 in order to avoid a complete social crisis. This included a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, expanded unemployment benefits, and a child tax credit to provide financial relief for families with children. The expiration of these policies led to, for example, the largest increase in child poverty in the country's history in 2022. This, combined with extreme inflation over the past several years, has created a deep economic crisis for many working families. Trump is attempting to opportunistically use this economic crisis to his advantage as he campaigns. He places the blame at the feet of the Democratic Party and uses classic divide and conquer tactics to pit oppressed people against each other, most notably arguing that black communities are struggling because the Democrats have allowed immigrants to take, quote, black jobs, end quote. But what programs does Trump really offer for black America? Trump's actual record with black America. Even before his political career, Trump's racism was well documented in 1973. His company, Trump Management, was sued by the Justice Department for systematically discriminating against prospective black tenants in New York City. In 1989, he took out an ad in the New York Times calling for the death penalty to be used against the Central Park Five, five black and Latino teenage boys who were falsely accused and convicted of rape in New York City. He has publicly said a litany of racist things since launching his first presidential campaign in 2015. But Trump's racism is not simply about his personal attitudes. His political program has nothing to offer black America. In 2017, Trump and the Republican Party nearly succeeded in repealing the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The ACA is deeply flawed because it allows healthcare to be treated as a commodity, something to be sold by private companies to make a profit, rather than as a human right that the government has an obligation to provide. But the ACA is an improvement over the healthcare system that existed in the United States prior to its passage. It is where, if it were repealed, an estimated 3.1 million Black Americans would become uninsured. In the presidential debate on September 10th, Trump revealed that he has no plan to replace the ACA if it is successfully repealed. Just, quote, concepts of a plan, end quote. And while so many argue that Black unemployment decreased under Trump, dropping from 7.5% when he took office to 5.4% in August of 2019, whatever gains made were completely wiped out by the arrival of COVID-19. The Trump administration's gutting of the for Disease Control and overruling of its public health measures and testing guidelines completely undermined pandemic response, leaving frontline workers, the majority of whom are Black, without protection, facing even greater risk of exposure. In fact, according to census data, Black people were disproportionately affected by the pandemic compared to their white counterparts and more likely to lose employment income and fall into debt to pay for household expenses due to COVID-19. Trump also spearheaded the repression against the uprising against racism and police brutality that occurred in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. Protesters in Washington, D.C. were violently removed by police from Lafayette Park so that Trump could do an infamous photo shoot in front of a nearby church. He organized a meeting with governors all across the country and demanded that they, quote, dominate, end quote, protesters, and he threatened to deploy the military to repress protests. Trump's political program is essentially to help the rich get richer while stoking culture wars between different groups of working class people so that we blame each other for the struggles we face in life, rather than blaming the capitalist system. The biggest accomplishment of his presidency was the passage of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Those tax cuts for the capitalist class are a significant factor in why so much more wealth has flowed up to the wealthiest Americans since 2017. The vast majority of Black Americans are working class, and Trump has no solutions for us. The real path to Black liberation. The fact that Trump's appeals have succeeded in garnering him some limited support among Black Americans is a serious indictment of the Democratic Party. And for the millions of people who will vote for Trump in November, many millions more will not vote at all because they do not have the faith in either the Democrats or Republicans to deliver on their promises. This is all an indication that people know that things in our society must change. The long-standing Black support for the Democratic Party is rooted in the Democrats' reputation as a party of the New Deal, workers' rights and labor unions, and civil rights. In reality, each of those things were products of struggles organized by Black workers and working people of all races. In all of these cases, both the Democrats and Republicans were obstacles to the progress and to the strength of the movements, and instability within U.S. society forced them to make concessions. The Black liberation struggle has faced some of its most significant defeats when trying to integrate itself within one of the capitalist parties. Reconstruction, the attempt by Black people to economically and politically reorganize the South after the Civil War, was housed within the Republican Party. The effort was ultimately crushed in 1877 when the capitalist interests that control the Republican Party betrayed Reconstruction. Let me repeat that. The Black liberation struggle has faced some of its most significant defeats when trying to integrate itself within one of the capitalist parties. Reconstruction, the attempt by Black people to economically and politically reorganize the South after the Civil War, was housed within the Republican Party. That effort was ultimately crushed in 1877 when the capitalist interests that control the Republican Party betrayed Reconstruction. In the 1960s, Black organizers in Mississippi tried to make the Democratic Party more aligned with the Civil Rights Movement by organizing the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. That effort exposed the racist nature of the party's elite and advanced the struggle, but was ultimately crushed by the Democratic Party establishment. The Black liberation struggle has made the most progress when Black people have organized independently of the Democrats, Republicans, and the capitalist class that those parties represent. As referenced above, over half of Black people recognize that need for a viable third party, in addition to having strong community groups and labor unions. We need a party as a vehicle to fight for political power. In contrast to the capitalist Republicans and Democrats, the party must be socialist. Black America is primarily a working class community, and socialists organize to put political and economic power in the hands of the working class. In 2024, Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia are running a socialist campaign for president and vice president of the United States. In the lead up to November and beyond, we must fight the misleadership of both the Republican and Democrats and build a movement that not only identifies the problems that Black Americans faces, but proposes real solutions. Hashtag government, hashtag political brutality, hashtag police brutality, hashtag racism, hashtag US working class. All right. Oh, my throat is weird today. Froggy throat day. So key words here are the establishment, which is the Democratic and Republican two-party system, and capitalism, right? All these are part of the same fascist ideology, uh, where, and I call it fascist because it's authoritarian, right? Because they use their system to oppress other people, and they paint it as freedom and democracy when it's not. This is a big propaganda system that called the media, the national media, that these major parties use to brainwash people into seeing the struggle as something between identities and not class war, right? So it is very important to separate uh, the kinds of these branches, to break them down and to understand how they all play a role in dividing us, the working class, and keeping us from pushing for a more socialist program and rejecting a ghoulish capitalist system that only rewards greed and rewards profits over the health and benefits of the community. So it's very important to just fully reject the system once you see that it is a corrupt and immoral system. It is important to fully reject it. And unfortunately, like I said, it's a class war, but the establishment, the system, the Republicans, the Democrats, the establishment news, they paint it always as an identity war, where instead of pointing at the billionaires that are literally stealing your wages, they point at the immigrants, saying that they are stealing your labor, labor that probably you wouldn't do to begin with. Uh, they point at Black people, saying that their communities are bad because of their culture and not because of their socioeconomic status that has been pushed onto them through decades and centuries of oppression and racism, systemic racism. Um, so once we all unite as a working class, and this is why the Socialist Party, like PSL, that Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia are important, is because they educate us, they organize us, and they mobilize us to have actual plans for strategic wins and not depend on these parties that just want our votes and just want to subdue us and just want to hijack the momentum to just water it down to identity politics. Um, their education is important, as I was saying, and we need. Where was I going with this? Yeah. So I mean, I guess I said it in a different way, but that's literally what's happening. But yeah, the class war. Once we're united under this banner of socialism, which is leftist, which is philosophically more morally just, um, because it tries to help everybody. Uh, they try to confuse us, the establishment system, the Western Empire, into thinking that we have some kind of superiority or individuality or independence based on how hard we work, right? So if you are a low income person, working class, they'll say you're that way because you're not smart enough, or because you didn't work hard enough, that you shouldn't earn a living wage. False. If you work full time, you should earn a living wage, and it should be enough for you to be able to pay your rent and live comfortably. If in the sector that you're living in, you're not making a living wage or the rent's too high, those are two individual problems that need to be addressed. That capitalist designed problems that oppress people. One is wages. Wages should always keep up with inflation, and they should always be enough for people to live comfortably in the area they live in. And two, the housing market exploits people, and it definitely should be regulated more strongly so that inflation doesn't run amok, so they can't just hijack all these homes. These real estate companies just purchase all these homes just to inflate the value and then try to sell it for like twice the price or rent it for twice the price. So these are common issues created by capitalists intentionally for the profit margins of the elite. So I was just talking about the lower class, the low income people, right? Now we can talk about the middle class and upper class. They're still the working class. There's no reason why you, as a doctor that makes 100,000 or so a year or 200,000 a year, should look down on janitors and say that they shouldn't make a living wage. And it is likely that as someone that uh, earns perhaps $100,000 a year, it is likely you are not really a capitalist. You're still in debt because you're still paying your mortgage, you're still paying for your health insurance, you're still not the kind of person that is exploiting workers, right? Capitalists exploit resources and workers. Now, say if you have a company and your company does well with you um, actually paying your workers a living wage, then that's a profitable and a moral system. But if your company is not paying a living wage, then it's not just. If you're exploiting people and charging the highest rents possible just because you can, that's not just either. There has to be a balance, right? And this is what socialism definitely aspires to create, a balance where the working class people together uh, can advance, can persevere, can have, they should all have solid, well-funded education for everybody, equally well-funded, equally high quality. They should all have high quality health care for everybody, universal health care, Medicare, whatever you want to call it. Uh, it shouldn't be a for-profit system. Your health should not be a for-profit commodified activity. Um, The same way housing. I'm not talking about giving people mansions, but we shouldn't have homeless people living on the streets. We have plenty of resources to make plenty of homeless shelters or plenty of small type studio apartments for everybody so that there could be a structural system to rehabilitate people that are homeless, whether it be a humane institution or housing projects, whatever. But there's no reason why we should create a form of dystopian poverty to show them as an example that if you don't conform to a capitalist system, that you are going to end up like them. So my final thoughts are always for all races, all working class, all identities. You should unite under the banner of working class solidarity against the imperialist corporate ghouls, the major capitalist enterprises that actually not only exploit and pillage abroad, but also exploit and steal your wages here at home. They steal your wages by underpaying you and by overcharging for services. Okay? All right. So that's my thoughts on this article. And as a socialist, I will be voting for Claudia de la Cruz and Corina Garcia. But I also think that If people want to vote for Jill Stein, that's good too. I just think the major point here is to vote for people that are actually going to educate you, organize you, and mobilize you to actually make differences, real leaders. You're not going to get real leadership from either the Democratic or Republican Party that always make promises to you and always screw you over to enrich the already uh, over wealthy people more. Don't forget that both of these parties love giving tax breaks to corporations and say that trickle down economics works, but poverty is rising in America. Over 50% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Uh, but the economy is great. Why? Because these corporations are getting filthy rich. Come on, this is just another empire. It's another monarchy. It's another way of having rulers, kings and queens, right? We all understand that the electoral process is a corrupt one in America as well. So we must resist this, fight against it, and organize to have working class solidarity to push forward for a better future for everybody. All right. So I'm going to move on here. Oh, yeah. And as the article mentioned, both parties have had plenty opportunities to uplift the working class, specifically to uplift or do kinds of reforms to give back to Black people per se. Um, you know, through the ages, through the decades, through the eras, and every time that they've been in power, they have betrayed the Black working class. This is why I say it's important for the Black working class, for all identities to unite under the banner of the working class. Uh, yeah, and I do. By the way, I do support reparations, but a good form of reparations would be a reparations that also uh, it's a nationalistic reparations, right? Like giving everybody universal health care. Uh, Now that's a gray area, obviously, but something like I mean, what happened to the 3 acres of a mule that all Black Americans were promised and they never received, right? So yes, I do believe in some form of reparations for Americans, Black Americans. We can always get more into what that would look like. Um, whether it be a stimulus check, whether it be free education for everybody. I don't know. But I think, yeah, something like, uh, first of all, if it was a full socialist system, national system, uh, that would probably already include reparations into it because you would be already giving everybody, not just Black people, universal health care, uh, full free education, right? And I guess eventually some kind of monetary reparation, perhaps savings bonds or something. I don't know. But okay, I'm gonna leave that article alone since there's not much else I can say about it. It's a solid article, just exemplifying and bringing up the facts as to how police has screwed uh, Black Americans and the working class in general. All right, let me check for audio again. Audio check 1 2 1 2. I don't know. I have a frog in my throat. I can feel it. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I usually take a cough drop and it helps, but all my cough drops are gone. Somebody's been taking my cough drops. All right. Next article here. Now, this is based on the article we read last week. But this article headlined Missouri kills innocent man despite widespread widespread opposition. Missouri kills innocent man despite widespread opposition. Article by Liberation Staff, Missouri, September 24th, 2024. All right. Article reads as follows. On September 24th, the state of Missouri executed Marcellus Williams, a black man who was innocent of the murder for which he was convicted. He has pronounced he was pronounced dead at 6:10 p.m. local time. His final statement was, quote, "All praise be to Allah in every situation," end quote. The picture here is of a bunch of people rallying. Rally in Kansas City, Missouri, September 23rd, Liberation photo. One of the signs reads, Governor Parson stopped the execution of Marcellus Williams. The article reads as continued, in response to the final refusal of the part of the Missouri State Supreme Court to stay the execution on September 23rd, protests and other actions were held across Missouri to say no to the lynching of an innocent black man by the state. Here's another picture. A press conference by Missourians to abolish the death penalty inside the Missouri Capitol, September 24th. Liberation photo. The article reads as follows. On September 24th, the day of Williams' scheduled execution, activists from across Missouri gathered in the state capitol. They delivered petitions totaling over 1 million signatures calling on Governor Mike Parson to call it off. A march made its way to the governor's mansion where chants and speeches were made and religious leaders led prayers. Williams was a prolific poet who often used his art to express solidarity with other prisoners, especially those on facing execution. He also wrote this poem, quote, "The perplexing smiles of the children of Palestine," end quote. Abolish the racist death penalty. So there's a link to that poem he read. Let's follow the link here. Cool. All right, so let's read the poem since this was such a short article, anyways. Uh, and this is against apartheid, 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 against apartheid. Art. Artists against apartheid. Apartheid. Artists against apartheid. Marcellus Williams. The perplexing smiles of children of Palestine. Despite the actions of the few and excessive retaliation. Excuse me, let me start that again. I'm so bad at reading. Maybe I need to just slow down. Okay. Poem reads, despite the actions of the few and excessive retaliation, drones, planes, bombs, tanks, rubbles, buildings demolished, vanished houses and neighborhoods, hospitals targeted, UN shelters disrespected, murder, death, deliberate killing of non-combatants, babies buried alive, amputations, hunger and political starvation, lack of or no water, strategic sanitation, daily terror, and terrorized daily, military maneuvering, moving here and there, to return back again to nowhere, trauma with all its manifestations, international parlays and hesitation, defiance to the realization of two nations, global aid thwarted, global amnesia, siblings and relatives gone forever, parental worries, in the face of apex arrogance and ethnic cleansing by any definition, still your laughter can be heard and somehow you are able to smile. Zero resilient children of Palestine. Is it? And somehow you are able to smile, oh, resilient children of Palestine. Sorry, I messed up the last. That wasn't a zero. So the last line reads, and somehow you are able to smile, oh, resilient children of Palestine. All right. So that is his poem. Uh, Probably the last poem he died before being executed. Just think about what a horrible, like I talked about this a little last on the last article about the same issue about Marcellus Williams. Just think about what a horrible, immoral system uh, trying to turn justice on its head. It's like we're living in the upside down, right? They're telling us that uh, the execution is justified as a punishment for murder. So, in order for people to understand that killing is bad, we're going to kill you, as an example. Um, just what a corrupt system, what a ghoulish system. Um, and I think this is it's good to study this further. Like as I mentioned last week, maybe I can redefine what I said last week. Uh, that this is just the capitalist system, the consumerist system that teaches us uh, that it's okay and normalizes that it's okay to kill people as a first choice because it's your right as self-defense. And so they use this and they externalize this to the world, right? They're somehow trying to justify defending Israel, funding its war crimes over the Middle East. And then they justify it here with the laws that tell you uh, and the lack of education, right? Like, for example, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, the laws of free speech and laws to bear arms. Um, no, there's two big differences between those. One of them is speech. The other one is using very dangerous mortal weapons, right? And if you are to have a weapon or own a weapon, yeah, you should go through very thorough um, barriers or prerequisites or training and education in order to own these weapons. We're not talking about toys here. I mean, even cars, for one matter or another. There's plenty of people that drive cars that aren't even driving properly. I see plenty of people that still talk on their phones while they're driving, that are constantly almost getting into accidents, and it's horrible, right? But now we're talking about weapons. That the right to bear arms is usually used as an excuse to say, I have a right to defend myself. Yeah, you do, but at the same time, is it really justified to try to say that uh, you were defending yourself from someone because they looked at you wrong? Or is it justified to say that you were defending yourself from someone with very lethal arms because they tried to steal your TV? Uh, and that is not to say that it can't be used as a source to defend yourself, but it should be used as a final source, to defend yourself. Uh, when you have many other options, there definitely is many other options, many other maneuvers. One of them is just walking away. One of them is just having a camera and letting people take all your shit, and then hopefully catching them later. Another one could be pepper spray guns, uh, having your ammo replaced with non-lethal bullets, right? Like bean bags or rubber bullets or whatever. But I think the major issue here is that in American culture, we tend to be brainwashed into justifying killing people in self-defense as opposed to just trying to save people in self-defense. Like like we believe in rehabilitation, right? We believe in abolition of jails. We believe in restorative justice. So it's just a moral construct where we have been taught to justify murder or killing people as a first offense instead of as a last offense. This goes back to like Stoic studies as well for me, and for psychological studies of like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. Goes back to the philosophies of Taoism, Maoism, Buddhism, Stoicism. And for me, it's like the four pillars of Stoicism, which is knowledge, temperance, justice, and courage, right? Uh, you should be able to find other deterrents and to find other ways to make society better than having some form of violence be your first resort. Uh, our goal of our goal of our goal as human beings should be to try to save everybody around the world. Even those who try to harm us should have some form of redemption arc or possibility, right? Uh, I mean, that even goes for multi-billionaires, that I don't think they should be executed. I think they should totally be dissolved of all their assets so that they can know what it's like to work normal jobs. Um, but yeah, so the system having the death penalty is not a deterrent for crime. This has already been proven in the studies. All it is a system maintaining the status quo so that people can fear that the system has no issue killing or murdering people or isolating people for going against the status quo, for going against the establishment. So, yeah, I support not only the abolition of the death penalty, the abolition of the incarceration system that enslaves people, and to switch it for better resources such as restorative justice, rehabilitation, and therapy and re education. All right. Let's read some of the signs here. Governor Parsons stopped the execution of Marcellus Williams and the death penalty now. Uh, Marcellus Williams is innocent. Stop the execution. Um, yeah, so they murdered a man. Our system, uh, called legally murdered a man. So this just goes to, as another example that not all laws aren't just. Being just and being moral is a different construct and ideology, and from very far from the capitalist system that has no problem stepping on people for the sake of profit, which is very unjust, very unmoral, very unethical. Okay, I'll continue. The case for Boeing. The case for seizing Boeing. I read that last week, I think. Yep. Okay, Boeing machinists go on strike. That should be a good one. All right, the headline reads Boeing machinists on strike. Workers demand a fair contract by Liberation Staff, September 25th, 2024. On Thursday, September 12th, over 33,000 Boeing employees represented by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Local 751 voted resoundingly to reject a tentative agreement (TA) and strike for a new contract. At the union's hall in South Seattle late Thursday night, a jubilant crowd of machinists roared in approval as John Holden, president of IAM 751, announced that 94.6% of members voted to reject Boeing's final contract offer and that 96% have voted to strike. The strike, which was filed with the National Labor Relations Board as an unfair labor practices strike, began at 12:01 a.m. Friday morning, capping off months of negotiations during which Boeing management failed to resolve fundamental differences with workers on issues including wage increases, job security, and retirement benefits. Holden further alleged that Boeing acted unlawfully in the lead up to the strike, claiming that, quote, there were many violations of the law while on the shop floor, including discriminatory conduct, coercive questioning, unlawful surveillance, and unlawful promises of benefits, end quote. Demand for fair treatment. The overwhelming vote to reject the TA and affirm a strike reflects the significant discontent that has been festering among Boeing workers in the past decade. Since the union's last strike in 2008, wages for machinists have failed to keep pace with rampant inflation and the rising cost of living in the Puget Sound area. Grade 5 machinists under the current contract earn a minimum of $20 an hour, up from $16 an hour in 2008, a 25% increase, while inflation has increased by 44% in the same time period. Meanwhile, Boeing shareholders voted for increasing the compensation of Dave Calhoun, Boeing's former CEO, from $22.6 million in 2022 to nearly $33 million in 2023, an increase of roughly 45%. The juxtaposition of modest wage increases for workers and exorbitant raises for executives is a central issue of contention for many union members. Kelvin, a Boeing lab employee based in Seattle, said, quote, we're not asking for too much when the CEOs are getting more than what we have. We built the planes and they just sit in their offices. It's all about getting what's a fair share. To live in Renton or Seattle, it costs a lot of money, end quote. Motivated by this disparity, IAM 751 demanded a 40% average wage increase across all grades, with larger increases for lower grades. The union also sought assurances of job security. In March of 2021, Boeing moved production of its 787 Dreamliner from a union plant in Everett, Washington, to a non-union plant in South Carolina. Workers want a guarantee that the next Boeing commercial airline program will be built in unionized plants in the Pacific Northwest to ensure that Boeing remains a large employer in the region. Additionally, the union requested a return to the previous pension plan, which has replaced with a 401k matching scheme in contract extensions in 2011 and 2013. During a press conference following the vote, Holden noted that the loss of the pension plan was, quote, one of the toughest issues we faced out of the last extension, end quote, and that many members still felt the impact, emphasizing its importance in the current negotiations. An insufficient tentative agreement. On Sunday, September 8th, mere days before the old contract was set to expire, IAM 751's bargaining team announced that they had reached a tentative agreement with Boeing, though it fell short of key union demands. The TA offered an average wage increase of only 25% and did not reinstate the pension plan. Furthermore, it failed to assuage worker concerns regarding job security, as it only guaranteed that the next airline program would be built in the region if the program were launched during the lifetime of the contract. However, corporate leadership has repeatedly stated that Boeing will not introduce the next program until the 2030s, well after the expiry of the TA. The chasm between the TA and the union's initial bargaining demands proved too significant for workers, prompting frustration and disappointment from machinists. In response, Holden wrote a letter prior to the vote in which he emphasized that the TA was the best possible deal short of striking, and stressed that the decision was ultimately in the hands of the members, quote, right where it's supposed to be, end quote, and that the union would go with whatever members decided. Some employees, while acknowledging the shortcomings of the TA, understood why union leadership recommended its ratification. George Rocky, who works in wing systems and installations for the 737 in Renton, felt that the TA was the quote, best deal they could get with Boeing at the time without striking, end quote. He noted that while the TA contained, quote, surprisingly significant things, end quote, it was insufficient, quote, especially with wage increases, end quote. Corporate miscalculations. The strike comes at a time of vulnerability for Boeing. A string of corporate missteps over the past few years, including cost-cutting measures affecting engineering and testing, led to two groundings of the 737 MAX in 2019 and 2024, one due to fatal crashes and the other due to a door plug failure. These incidents, which affected the majority of Boeing's plane orders, have had severe financial repercussions for the company, contributing to its nearly $60 billion debt. Perhaps due to the company's current precarious position and the estimated $500 million per week that the strike could cost, Boeing's corporate leadership has adopted conciliatory language towards the union following the vote. On the night of the strike announcement, the company said in a statement that, quote, the message was clear that the tentative agreement was not acceptable to members, end quote, and that it wanted to reset relations with the workers and the union and resume bargaining. The following morning, Brian West, Boeing's CFO, said at the conference that the TA, quote, didn't meet the mark, end quote. A breakdown in negotiations and an attempt to circumvent the union. Despite Boeing's remarks in the immediate aftermath of the strike announcement, mediation between Boeing and IAM 751 broke down on Wednesday, September 18th, less than 1 week after the beginning of the strike on Monday, September 23rd. Rather than resuming bargaining with IAM 751, Boeing went to the media with what they called an, quote, improved best and final offer, end quote. Highlights from the offer include a 30% general wage increase, up from 25% in the TA, spread over 4 years. Boeing also doubled the ratification bonus for machinists to $6,000 from $3,000 in the TA. Boeing gave members a deadline of 11:59 p.m. on Friday, September 27th, to ratify the new offer. In a statement released on the evening of September 23rd, the union's negotiating committee accused Boeing of bypassing standard negotiating channels by attempting to deal directly with machinists through the media. Despite the negotiating committee's expressed willingness to continue with mediation, the union claimed that Boeing continued to resist overtures made by the negotiating committee to resume bargaining even after the release of the September 23rd offer. In a statement released on September 24th, the union said that the machinists made, quote, overwhelmingly clear, end quote, in internal surveys that the updated offer was not satisfactory. The union also said that Boeing's September 27 deadline did not give machinists sufficient time to consider the offer. In response, Boeing moved the deadline without setting a new one. The union, however, has maintained that they will not vote on the new agreement until Boeing is willing to resume negotiations. A resurgent labor movement. The machinists' decisive action to reject the TA is the latest chapter in the broader resurgence of the American labor movement. Since 2023, labor unions in the U.S. have achieved multiple historic victories. During a press conference on Thursday night, Holden mentioned how IAM 751 took inspiration from recent organized labor victories. Quote, there were a lot of awesome wins in the labor movement, and I think that momentum is something that helped us, brought confidence to our members, and so we certainly looked upon that as something to aspire to achieve as well. So we're hoping to continue the labor movement's success with our actions here, end quote, said Holden. Union members echoed Holden's sentiment, expressing that morale and solidarity were at all-time highs, said Rocky. We've never been more united as far as with membership. It has been 16 years that the company has had its way, and it's time for a fair contract, end quote. Hashtag labor, hashtag strike. Yeah, so when you have a union that isn't corrupted, they will always fight for you And they make valid points. Inflation went up 41%, and they only want to raise their wages 25%, while the CEO gets a 45% increase in his already hugely inflated earnings. Let's see if I can find here again how much exactly. 60 billion, is it? Repercussion? No, that ain't it. Okay, so Dave Calhoun, Boeing's former CEO, got a raise from 22.6 million in 2022 to nearly 33 million in 2023, an increase of roughly 45%. It's like, F you, man. Like, you make $22 million a year and you think you deserve a raise? I mean, like, even if you made $1 million a year, you don't deserve a raise. No, it's so unnecessary. Like, what kind of greed is this? Like, who, if you can't survive on $1 million a year comfortably with plenty of luxuries, uh, you are failing at life miserably. So giving somebody $33 million a year in earnings to be a CEO, get out of here. Like, this is so absurd. It's so disgustingly unnatural, uh, to give me people, to pay people so much so that they can steal so many more resources from people. You know what I mean? This is what capitalism does. It creates total corruption and total immorality of what humanity is really supposed to be like, of what uh, moral justice should really be like. It's total greed. So I totally support this. I hope the workers at Boeing get what they deserve. Uh, but obviously, this is not enough. It's not enough to just uh, have unions, but unions are a good progressive step towards people uniting and organizing to fight corporate greed. I think better steps are to have co-ops to fully take these companies away from these schools and have the workers own the means of production. Um, I mean, if these ghouls act like, oh, we're such heroes, we're so good, such good people. Look at what we have accomplished. No, if you were a good person, you would take a major pay cut to begin with, and stop acting like you deserve more money. You would take your $1 million a year, perhaps, and you would give more power to the workers and turn it into a co-op system, so that the workers can actually benefit from such great production, right? All right. And it's not just in regards to how ghoulish they are by stealing their workers' wages. Don't forget that this company is under investigation because it was making faulty planes that could literally kill people and literally kill people. Okay. All right. So that's it for today. I don't see any other additional articles. Uh, yep. No additional articles. Not going to milk it today. It's been an hour. Uh, Audio is good. Like I said, this is just a read along for my personal gain, uh, and the analysis is for my personal gain. Feel free to read along, join in the live sessions, or comment, or give your input. But mostly, just feel free to use this as perhaps an audio book of the articles. If you are not able to read them yourselves, but you can listen to them while you work. Okay, everybody have an excellent day. Keep up the fight. Don't forget what's most important here is gaining working class solidarity and not allowing for the system to divide us under identity politics, as they love to do. The real struggle is class, right? It's always us, the working class, against the imperialist corporatists that are always trying to extract more money at all cost and exploit not only us, the working class here, but around the world. Keep up the struggle. Good day, good weekend.